Did you know you can sponsor your favorite podcast on the Spin Market Podcast Network? Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Stockdale, host of the Spin Market Report. In the past year, our podcasts have had over 20,000 total streams, and our YouTube channels have had over 1 million views. Whether you're promoting a product, service, or event, we'll help you reach the audience that matters. Get more information on how to sponsor a podcast at spinmarketwith2ks.com. Spin Market. Your business, your message, our platform.
It's the Spin Market Report. Here's your host, Peter Stockdale.
Okay, we are back. It's another episode of the Spin Market Report. It is Marketing Monday.
Yay!
Love it. We're getting close to the end of the year with this recording here. We're sitting down with Kole Jaeschke. How you doing?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. And I love the intro there.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
I played that good. No, I'm just kidding. I do want to say Kole has a podcast. It is called How to Money with Kole and Kole. There's a
original.
Yeah, there's two Koles.
Yep.
You guys' podcast actually has been, like as of the last part of this year, really kind of been taken off. So it's pretty cool to see that,
It's been fun. It's always a new challenge in the different things changes you're trying to make or guests or, try to bring new content ideas and also, pushes us, continue to try new things.
I love that. Pushes us.
Yep.
Because that's something that every business needs to remember. Do not get complacent. You have to keep pushing.
And your guys' team, I'll give you props. You guys have done a great job of keeping us kind of on track, and it's been cool to see your growth. We're talking about this a little bit of growth of the podcasts that you guys are now involved in. When we were I think we were the originals. We were the OGs.
Yeah.
You were the ones that were willing to take something totally not the norm in our community and just really embrace it. And it is working for you. You've got some great numbers, and it's exciting to. Peter always puts together the monthly numbers, and it's always fun to see how things have changed and how well your podcast is doing.
Yeah,
and you have some great people that you bring on too.
Oh yeah, I mean that's probably one of my favorite things. Is it's not just financial advice; it's also like community people too. So and you can talk to them about their entrepreneurship and things like that, because that's something that you are known for yourself. I do also want to say you're really close to episode 100.
Yeah,
I know.
This is not just some fly-by-night operation. You guys have been doing this for a while, and it shows, because that'll be like every other week. That's almost 4 years of podcasting for you guys. That's wild. So.
Well, I was going to say that one of your last guests, Ken, was that his name?
You're
Eddie.
Eddie Thompson. Yep.
I have told more people about that. I said, I don't care if you want to have any financial advice or not. This dude is that good that you will learn something from it. One of the best ones I've seen.
That's one of my favorite things about the podcast is when we have the guests on and you get a kind of, and a lot of times we've heard their story or we've that's why they're on, is because we know them or have some connection, but we always learn something. It seems like something new when you get them on mic or when it's more of a live situation. And that was really fun. And I think Bailey would echo that. It was probably our favorite pod, or one of our, I can't say, we've had a lot of entrepreneurs on, so I don't want to single anyone out, but it was definitely one of our favorites and most recent, most memorable.
He had some real gems in that conversation. Just some real, very important takeaways that I think, families really
very relatable. So highly encourage you to listen to that one or watch it or both.
Or go back and listen to the episode with Kole P too after you're done with this one. That was a good one. That was maybe 10 episodes back or something like that. We're pretty close to getting the whole triple crown of full swing financial planning in here. We're coming for you, Bailey.
Yeah, we're coming, Bailey.
She's the best guest to have on. So she's the most improved. She's really facilitates our because that's a tough, as you guys know, when you're doing this, it's tough to transition, facilitate the conversation, and also keep especially a person like me who can ramble, keep you on track, so we're not just going off on some topic forever.
Yeah, it's also fun when somebody else comes up with the ideas for the podcast, and every now and then she'll come in and I'll be like, this episode is a great idea, like this is perfect, and it's really fun knowing that, like, it's not that like as a producer I have to babysit anyone, because most of the podcasts are pretty self-involved. They do it all themselves, and it's really cool to see you guys come in with these ideas and be like, yeah, I really like the concept of this one. So all right, let's kick into this, though. We've had a fun little preamble here, but What first drew you into financial planning or financial advising, Kole?
Yeah. So, my first attempted career was to play professional football. So that was my first. I got done with college football, was able to have a pretty successful career and enough interest from, the professional level to try to attempt to go down that route. So my first, call it 6 to 12 months post college, that was really what my focus was try to attempt to make a career out of it. Now, with that being in mind, I was also a realist, understanding it was a long shot to probably make a long-term career out of that for anyone. So when I would say last year and a half of college, I started to really okay, what am I going to do if football doesn't work out? And I started making some connections. I had already graduated with my primary bachelor's degree, so I was taking some classes to get a minor in finance. So I'd started taking some investing classes, different things there, and I had a few professors that had experience in that industry. So I started asking questions, and I made a few connections locally with people that were in the financial planning business that really intrigued me. To know that, hey, this is probably the next thing if this doesn't work. I also considered being I had this moment where I was like, I was either going to be a football coach and I was going to be a grad assistant, go back and get my master's for something that I did not care about. I just want to coach football, or I was going to go. So it was one of the others, either football or this life. And, I really looked at nothing against football coaches or anything, but it's a tougher family lifestyle. It's very demanding. You travel, you can get fired. And I was wanting a little bit more stability. Yeah, that was like the priority for me. So I went down this route, and I really just, and it was a lot of conversations with people. They're like, well, what do you actually do and all that stuff. So that was like kind of the route that led me down, and, I went from there.
You actually are a Peacock, correct?
Yep.
That's actually where I graduated from, believe it or not. So
awesome. Yeah, fellow Peacocks.
There we go.
There's a few around the area. So
it works. I went there. I liked it. I thought it was a great place.
Von McQuillan, one of the owners of Iowa Fire Control, Ryan Smith's brother-in-law. Sure. He played football at Upper Iowa.
Oh, cool.
He's from that area, somewhere up in northeast Iowa, in the sticks up there. But yeah, so whenever I see him, we always have a good football story or something to talk about.
That's so fun. I was going to ask you, was this something you always wanted to do? But you kind of answered that question already. Have you ever seen 30 for 30, the Broke episode?
Yeah, I have.
Did you watch that before you went into financial advising?
I had seen that. I remember, and even like all the professors, if you took finance classes, a lot of times in Upper Iowa was really small classes, so there was a lot of athletes. So it was always those kind of conversations came up. So I remember that and remember thinking, like, how does that happen? How do those guys do that? And now that I've been in the industry, I see, maybe not on that scale sometimes, but similar to like an inheritance, and someone, rolls through an inheritance very fast. Same type of concept, right? They get a big lump sum of money out of nowhere, not prepared emotionally, or, don't have the professionals around, and all of a sudden, there's a couple $1 million that's gone, or whatever dollar, whatever's relative to you.
Yeah, I remember when I went to Iowa Central, I wrote a paper on like the psychology of windfall cash, and it was like staggering to see how much was squandered. The other thing I thought was fun was like the people that don't squander it. The conclusion that a lot of this paper was like people don't feel like they deserve it, so they got to get rid of it somehow. So it's either invested or buy something, which feels kind of weird, but I don't know. So let's kick forward into the future here. Full swing financial planning. At what point in time did you decide from, I'm going to not play football, I'm going to do the financial planning thing, and then where does full swing financial planning come into play?
Yeah, I kind of had an evolution in my, financial planning career, I would say. First, I started my career at Edward Jones, which a great firm, but you're more of an employee in their model. They own the book of business. They control a lot of the controllables, but they had a really good training program. It was a great way for me to get started. So, I went through their training, and there was an advisor in the Jefferson area that really got me kind of parlayed into that career field. And he had been in the industry. I would consider him a mentor. My first mentor in the industry was him. And, I was there for, 5 or 6 years. And then, after that, I kind of started I felt like, hey, I wanted to make some more of the business-like decisions and be more of an independent, business owner, really. I was in full control of my book at Edward Jones, but there was a lot of things that I couldn't control and things that I couldn't do. It was controlled at the corporate level. So I decided to make that step to go in what our world is called, to go independent. to where I'm now, full control of the technology, the employees, the different things. I still have to follow all the same rules and regulations, in the industry that are standards. But now I really got to make the full, a lot of the decisions. There's really what I felt like was being a true entrepreneur, true business owner.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's one of those things. The big businesses are awesome because they can help train you in such a great way, but there's also like the policy and procedures that kind of, I don't want to say like tie your hands a little bit. You kind of just have to do what's in the book and they tell you to do. And
it taught me a lot of the processes that I still use today, right? I'm like, that was one of the things I'm like, hey, I probably wouldn't do some things I'm doing today if I wouldn't have had that experience. So I completely attribute, and that's where even like things that now I would say like Kole and Bailey, when they came along, they're partners of mine at Full Swing. Some of the things that they're now doing are probably, impacted by me, and vice versa. Some of their experiences have molded onto me and things I'm doing. But I really think it was kind of I wouldn't be where I'm today if I would have just tried to take this step that I'm at now. Mm-hmm. It kind of takes that evolution of like, okay, I learned, I built the arsenal a little bit more and more. Okay, I don't want to do this. I do want to do that. And it was able to kind of get it to the final, result of us of starting Full Swing Financial Planning. And I think that's ever evolving too, as, any business is. There's changes and things that we're constantly making, or things we're like, we tried that. It's not really working, or we don't like it, or we don't like how that looks. Let's adjust, or the staff doesn't like it, or it doesn't fit our clients' needs.
Yeah.
One thing that as I've learned the personalities between you three.
Yep.
You each bring a wholly different segment to the partnership and make a whole.
I completely agree.
Once you know how Bailey works and how Kole P works and how you work, it's really fascinating to watch how well you've been able to grow your business in such a short period of time.
I think that's where, one thing that we all have different types of clients, mm-hmm. right? It's a lot of the same goals and objectives we're trying to accomplish, but I work with some personalities that might not be a fit for Bailey or Kole, right. and vice versa mm-hmm. for them. So that's what I think we do. And naturally kind of think we are kind of siloed a little bit individually where, yes, we have Full Swing as our brand and everything that we run under, but I kind of have my book of business, Bailey has hers, Kole's, and we have some intermingling where we're sharing or we're serving clients together, or all three. It just depends on the client's needs and such there, but it is unique where, there's some personalities that just mm-hmm. do not work together well.
And you're describing the silos. Your silos are good silos.
Yep.
That really complement each other on there. It's the total package. So you had, Full Swing.
Yeah. You had mentioned you worked for let's just call it a big box financial company. There's a handful of them out there. How is what you guys do at Full Swing different than that, other than, kind of what you basically described earlier? Yeah,
I would say when someone, if they don't know our industry versus if you're going to be an employee-based advisor or someone that's you get a W-2 wage versus an independent where you're 1099, you're a contractor, right? One is going to be the product offering. You generally have a lot more available to you. Not saying that's good or bad. There's just like a firm like Edward Jones. I'm picking on them because I have the experience of them. Mm-hmm. They're going to have a little bit more control, and it's going to be condensed down because they're the ones on the back end hook for anything that me as a W-2 employee, if I do the wrong thing or sell the wrong product or whatever it is. So they're going to have a little bit more controls on that product lineup, right? Because they're the ones taking the risk. You're hired by them. Ultimately, you have some risk too, but ultimately, if you make a really big mistake, it's going to up the chain versus the independent world. I'm taking more of that individual risk right on there. So yes, that's good and bad. For us, it gives us that flexibility and I think a competitive advantage on saying, hey, we're not just representing this specific product line. We can go out in the marketplace and be much more competitive or try to find the best thing available for you or whether it's, an investment strategy or it's a product or whatever it might be. That's really the space that we play in. And I would say ultimately there's a lot of places that can do what we do, but really it comes down to, first and foremost, I think it's the people, like the people we have in our organization, but then processes. And I think that's where in our industry, the most successful offices, businesses, they are very process oriented. And I think that's what, our whole team, has really focused on and tried to say, hey, we're going to work on processes constantly. And really it comes back to processes built around serving the clients, right? So, and that's where, and if it's not working, we need to adjust the process. And that helps, with just the clarity of our team, of what we're trying to accomplish with individuals.
I couldn't agree more, honestly. How has your approach changed over time then? How long has Full Swing been around? Is it two plus?
2 years. Yep. 2 years. Been in the independent space. I've been about 4 or 5 years somewhere. I'm about a decade total in the industry, and basically, I tried to play football and this has been it. So those are my two. So I've only did this. That's all I really know. And involved in a few other partnerships and other business entities as well. But it's really evolved. I've been asked this a lot, and I think it's definitely gone to more like values based. If I would say is like, if we want to have a sustainable long-term relationship, I can't just sell you on, hey, I'm the best stock picker, or your account's going to do the best return with me. That's like a no-win. I always tell people if you're just coming for us for a return, you can go anywhere and try to chase returns. It doesn't matter. You can go online, you can go to Robinhood, you can go to anywhere there. It's really of the intimacy that we're going to try to get to match what we're putting, your plan together for the back end goals. In financial planning, I think most people just think of retirement planning, but you obviously know Peter from doing the podcast with us. It's a lot deeper than that. It can be estate planning, or, really digging into like, what do you want to happen with your financial plan?
Absolutely. So let's talk about like biggest challenges and the most rewarding parts. Let's start with the biggest challenges. What's been some of the biggest challenges, maybe starting the company?
Yeah, I'll give two. I guess I'll start with the industry, with our industry just in general. For someone getting started, I think it's very difficult to start with nothing, right, in our industry anymore. It used to be you could, I think, if you had a mentor, but now it's getting to where it's hard to make it, for someone, because I think the industry, if you look it up, these stats might be way off, but when I started, it was like 80% failure. Mm-hmm. So, and it was within 3 years. So most people were out of the industry they get their licenses about 3 years. I think it was like 83% when I first started. And that means it's really difficult, but the people that make it beyond that, it's kind of like, it's really tough your first 3 years, and you kind of start to see, hey, it start to snowball and compound. And I think the tough thing is, just like financial planning, it's delayed. Delayed gratification. You do a lot of the work up front to try to build relationships, get referrals, get people to trust you. Right. And that's a hard thing is it's money is very close and personal to people. And there are a lot of people that want help, but they won't just openly, talk about that too a lot. So that's one of the, I think just anyone looking to get in the industry, very difficult challenge. I would say for Full Swing in general, and just is the, ever evolving like business landscape when we're constantly looking. A lot of our processes and stuff are based around changes in regulation and like what rules and things are going on. So that's, I can't say it's like the most difficult thing, but I feel like we're always kind of 2 years away from, new legislation of something that's going to affect, financial planning, or something where we're gonna have to change, or tax code changes, right? Yeah. Those things are constantly to where then, okay, now maybe we had a process for this, but now the rules are different. So now we got to change that, right? So, which it also is good because it's making us, think constantly about our processes, right? So, but yeah, I don't know if that was a great answer, but no,
that's good. I mean, you're reducing the stagnant thing we were talking about earlier with companies. How about the most rewarding parts of the job? What I don't know if you don't need to give a specific example, but like, what are the most rewarding parts to you about this job?
Yep, I would definitely say there is. There's enjoyment when someone has that like sigh of relief of like, you tell them they can retire, or, because there's some people that they don't care, whether the numbers make sense or not. Like, I hit this date, I'm retiring, I'm flipping on Social Security, here's what I got in assets, let's make it work. But there's some people that are very cautious, and they want someone to kind of, put that stamp of approval on, and that, that like sigh of relief, like, oh, you mean I can actually do this and make this work. And you see that like freedom of like, oh, now I have that freedom. I don't have to go to work anymore. That's super, super cool and gratifying, I would say, to see. Other thing would be when someone really accomplishes a goal, like not just retirement, but say they pay off their house
Yeah.
or something. And you help them with the strategy, and you can just see that's like a proud moment for them. Really, really, really cool. Or they can help a grandchild or a child. They get to pay for their education because they saved in an account. Like those are very, very cool things.
There, just recently, somebody was talking about the eagles that people are putting on their houses in the south part of town.
Yeah, that was on Talk Fort Dodge, I believe.
Talk Fort Dodge, exactly, on there, which was because they had burned their mortgage.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep. Isn't that fun?
Yep.
I hadn't ever heard that before, but it's kind of a tradition in that part of town.
That's cool.
So if you see an eagle on a house,
Yep.
That
used to be the eagle over the house or over the door. A red painted door was another one. I can't remember when I
never knew this.
When I was in Hawaii, I think it was they put lions at the front gate entrance of their house. So like you would put like 2 pillars and put a lion on each one, so the driveway was like bound, and you could see that this person paid their house.
It's a proud moment for a lot of people when they're like, I no longer have a mortgage on my house, and that's a cool thing. But there's so many scenarios I've gone through now over the last 10 years. Now that I think of like the cool stories, or where you've seen someone that I worked with 9 years ago, and now they've transitioned into retirement, or accomplished a lot of things, or compounded their wealth, whatever it might be.
I guess I didn't think about this. So like most people, the only availability they have like to see somebody retire is possibly their parents.
Yep.
Maybe their grandparents. So like the way that we would be able to have this conversation with our parents, you only have 2 people's point of view on what retirement looks like and the numbers. But you, as a financial advisor, get to look at a whole handful of different people. So you're, I guess, more exposed to it. So you can see the different scenarios where it's like somebody says, I want to retire XYZ. And you're like, that's possible because you've seen it before in somebody else. And somebody else says, well, I want to retire ABC. And you're like, well, that's also possible because I've seen other people do it. So you know the route that somebody has to take. I guess I never thought about that until just now, actually.
Yeah, that's again, I've always said the best part of my job is I get to hear everyone else's stories, right? So I get to hear their goods and bads, what really worked. I'm like, oh, that's like, I'm going to do that because that was awesome, really successful. On the other side of that, this is like, you made me think about this. One of the piggybacking to the toughest things about our job would be when someone has unrealistic expectations, or you have to kind of pop their bubble a little bit of like, hey, what you want is very unrealistic, or you have to get a drastic rate of return to be able to accomplish that. Like, and that's always tough, right? Or when someone goes into, long-term care or assisted living or something and then they're really winding assets down, and like they just didn't plan outside of that. And sometimes people can't, they just can't. And you just know there's going to be nothing left, at the back end. But those are tough. Like, cause we do have to have, for as much of the great conversations, we also have a lot of, accountability, tougher conversations where, if they're wanting to work with us and they're wanting guidance and education or coaching from us, like we are going to tell them like, hey, this, what you want is probably not going to work, or you got to make some adjustments to make this work.
That's wild. I've always been intrigued by your job. It was something I kind of wanted to get into, and I went down the accounting route instead because I always said like accounting is past money and finance is future money.
Yep.
And I always thought it was easier to go crunch numbers in the past than it was to crunch numbers in the future. So that's just the route I chose. But
more hypotheticals in my world, right? It was more projections and
Yeah, mine's absolutes for the most part. Yeah. Okay, so here's a fun question. So you're a business owner here in town with Full Swing Financial Planning, financial advisor, family man, community member. You are also a partner in some other businesses in town. Like, how do you balance all this? Like, I hear you come in and I help you record your podcast and I listen to it, and it's just, how are you so happy and not tired all the time?
I will say I that's one thing. I do want to say this, right? This is we have a lot of chaos in the world, and you never know what someone's going through on the back end. So first and foremost, we need to always be respectful and kind to people, right? Because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I've had some personal things like recently of people that I just wish I was able to say, how you doing? And I think we need to do more of that as human beings, whether you're, whatever side of the fence you sit on things. But I will say I'm pretty disciplined with my time, right? That's first and foremost. I'm very routined. I've been kind of under the weather, sick. I feel pretty good today, but the last week or so, we were on vacation last week, and boy, talk about things that throw off my schedule. Coming back from
Yes.
vacation, then I've been kind of under the weather.
Yeah.
So my poor wife, thinks I'm the biggest baby in the world, when that happens. But I have an amazing wife too. That's what I say. She is awesome on the personal side of like scheduling kids. I mean, so a lot of that gets taken off my plate. So I will say I'm very fortunate. She doesn't have a formal job, but her job is more important than mine because it allows me to do everything that I do with my detailed work schedule. And then also a great team. You got to, if you're going to have multiple things going on, you have to have some other people just because I don't have the time to answer every question, every phone call, things that I get. And that's where, the scheduling and having a team really matters.
Well, I love your analogy on the team end because if you look at any business that grows, it's the team.
Yep.
It's not the one person in there. But if they're growing on there, you know that they have a successful team.
It's a sign of, most good leaders, out there, whether it's business owners, sports, whatever it is, you'll notice it right away with their team.
Absolutely. So let's talk about education because that's something else we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. How much education goes into you and your client base or your customer base or the people you're helping out in any capacity, I guess? Maybe not necessarily, because I'm assuming it's not always clients that are coming up to you asking you questions, but how important is education? Because I think about it could just be like retirement. I want to retire at this age or that age, or what should I do with these investments? Should I hold them? Should I, or like maybe even Full Swing's Social Security seminar that you guys run every year? How important is education?
It's depending on what the client's wanting to accomplish, right? I think the more one really important thing for me, for our team, is to make sure we're asking the right questions right first. We need to ask the right questions to understand what you're trying to accomplish and what the expectations are. And then it kind of comes back to education. How educated is one, or sophisticated is the person? Do they want to do some things more on their own? Or are they wanting more guidance from us? Right? Because some of that is hey, they just need help facilitating, making sure they're not making a mistake. Some are hey, we need you to help us with everything, every little detail. And that's where, we got to make sure we're suited for that too. And that's where we kind of have our areas that we know we're not suited in. And we'll tell someone, hey, we need to bring in another professional or whatever it might be. I will say a lot of our job is facilitating maybe some other relationships too with our clients. Mm-hmm. It's us, I'll use a football analogy. We're being the quarterback and we're kind of grabbing, hey, we need an accounting professional for this, or we need your attorney for this, but again, up front, we're having a lot of that upfront conversations. And then I really do think, and that's more, I would say, tailored on the older investor. When you get to younger investors, we're definitely doing a lot more education of here are some best practices, right? A lot of it's the best practices, things of this is what's out there. And again, being upfront and telling me you don't have to accomplish everything at once, but let's try to do a couple things correct or in the right, I don't want to say correct, but that are having a positive impact. Mm-hmm. Not that you have to have these 10 things done all right at once.
Yep. That makes me think listening to your podcast, it's fun to hear oh, you should probably doing this might be harmful and doing this might be more beneficial to you. And it's oh yeah, I'm doing that. And then it's yeah, but I had to learn that lesson the hard way. Yep. And I was 24 when I finally changed, and there's things where it's even he's well, I did learn pretty young on a lot of this stuff, but there's stuff even still, it's just man, I was 30 when I finally figured this out. And it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
The quicker people can become, financially literate, the better, right? And that's where, obviously the number one thing that we have to control when we're younger, and because you can't save unless you have income, right? So you got to focus on trying to find something with income, what you want to do, kind of tailored around that. So because someone's well, I want to save this much, but if you don't have the income to just, you just, it's a wish in the air, right? Yep. You're not going to get there. You still got to have the income to try to get there.
That's so fun. Yeah, I don't know. This again, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about with people, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's talk about wanting to help people make better financial decisions. What does that look like for you today, day to day? What are some of the most common advice that you give to just the general person?
Yeah, I would say I was trying to think of this question of the masses, mm-hmm. and one thing would be on where, again, I always talk about instant gratification, delayed gratification. You've heard me talk about that many, many times. Mm-hmm. And I try to do this myself, especially on major purchases or bigger, and major is relative to the individual, right? It might be, if you're 18, it might be, spending $500 on shoe or whatever, something that's $500 buying a new phone, right? Or when you're 35, it might be, well, do I need that, brand new F-150 or can I get a used F-150, right? Those are things of asking yourself, is this a need or a want, right? And especially if you have financial goals that you're not quite meeting it. You're like that voice in the back of your head, like, hey, this decision's probably going to impact this, or if things get tight, I'm not going to do this, right? And I think that's always like the 24-hour rule on major decisions. Like, don't make immediate decisions. Think about it. It's okay to say, hey, I'm going to think about it, right? Because people are good salesmen. Like I always pick on car dealers, they're good. Like, people love to just get a new car, right? It's something like, there is something about that, that feeling, but like, sleep on it and you think like, is this the right decision, right? It's not just emotional of like, yeah, I really want that shape. And I'm subject to this, right? I've had this where I'm like, gosh darn it, why did I do that? I should have waited. I probably wouldn't have bought it if I would have waited, on theirs, but it's always something just like, easy thing to do. Give yourself 24 hours, go through that. Is this a need or a want? And it's okay to have nice things. I'm not telling people it's not, but if it's going to come to a detriment to your, personal savings, or you're not being able to, fill your retirement or your Roth IRA bucket, right? And it's a choice of buying a new car. Like, you probably need to second guess some of those decisions.
Yeah. One of my favorite pieces of advice you guys talked about on a recent episode was like the 24-hour delay. You could put some of your like emergency fund or some of your savings in a place that's not 100% easily accessible instantaneously. And that was something my parents did for me growing up when they were like,
so you had to it took a little bit of time or a little bit of friction to get the money to you to be able to spend.
Yeah. So I had to go to a place and talk to a person, then they had to fill out some paperwork, and then the money came to me, and it usually took a few days. And it's like, I was always like, this is so inconvenient. But then when I got into my 20s, I was like, oh, this is awesome, because I'm not spending this money that I probably shouldn't spend.
I have quite a few people that we have separate accounts that are just kind of like their excess reserve accounts that they'll tell us, like, that's why that goes there, is because we know we have to call back, so they know, like, there's one step, and there's sometimes like, I don't want to call Kole and ask, or whatever it might be.
He's going to go, you just called yesterday. No, you're already over your quota.
So...
All right. So what is the one financial mistake you see most people making the most often? And I'm going to preface this with, if I knew Bailey was sitting here, I know what her answer would be if you listen to the podcast. But what's your answer?
Yeah, I would say, again, it's probably not knowing where their money's going, right? They know they're overspending or not. And that's really comes back to budgeting. Yep. I think that's, first and foremost, if everyone could just have a simple budget, whether you make a lot of money or a little bit of money, and just have an idea of like, okay, I know this is roughly what I spend, on a normal basis. And if you're, and that's one, you've just got to know where things are going first to kind of start. I think that's first and foremost. And I find there's, whether you're 18 or 65, it can be anywhere in between, or even older people that I'm like, still don't have a great, handle on spending, on what they're, where their money's going.
I can see that for sure, because you guys talk about budgeting a fair amount. Kole P was here, and he even brought up budgeting. And it made me think, like, all right, I've made a budget and I've followed it, and I'm comfortable where I'm at, yes. But at the same time, when I was talking to him, I was like, I'm gonna just go back like 6 months and just tally everything up and look at it. And there's a few things where sometimes you're just like, even though you're comfortable and you think you're doing all right, if you don't look at it, you're just like, well, I didn't know I was spending that much on going out to eat.
Especially when you put in, like, you start putting things into percentages of your income and things there. That's where it'll make you kind of sick at times. You're like, ooh, like 12% of my income is going to this, you're like, oh man, that sometimes will make you second guess, a decision or a habit or whatever you might be doing.
Yeah. I mean, especially depending on how you measure it out. Sometimes I'll be like, 1 hour of every day that I work goes to this.
Yeah.
And it's,
you put it in that context, kind of makes you,
it's shocking. It's so crazy. So let's flip it to the positivity. What's the biggest like aha moment you see with people when you kind of talk to them about certain things? What's the one that most people are just like, oh, okay.
I would say, I really enjoy, I don't know if I have like, because there's so many different ones, but I would say when we do a detailed financial plan for someone, where we do a lot of that, where the like budgeting, income, your savings, projections, all that going in there, and we kind of get it finalized or in a position where we can present, and then we can start playing with the what ifs. What if we retire early? What if we make more income? What if we save more? Those are, I would say, they get people bought in right? And like all of a sudden you see the engagement go up and like, oh yeah, I really want to, let's set this. Like we were thinking 60, but 58's doable if we make a few minor changes in our savings plan. I think that's one of those moments where people will kind of perk up, and like, especially when someone gets like 5 years, I find 5 years out from retirement is like a real, like people start to really engage. They're like, okay, what's this look like? For some younger people, I'm like, oh, it's 35 years from now. You're like, well, I got so many things that are going to happen, it's kind of and we still want to plan for those people, but the numbers are so further out there, versus someone that's, 3 to 5 years. It's starting to become reality, right? So they're really looking like, well, we have 5 years, but we can do 3 if we change these few things for the next 3 years, right? And then people will really like, you'll see the buy-in kind of go to the next level.
I do want to say, as we're getting kind of, I would say on the back half of this podcast, congratulations again on being nominated and awarded one of the 10 under 40 in Fort Dodge. That's got to be really cool. I think about like, I'm almost 40, and how much work you do in your life leading up to being 40, and you're, several years younger than I am. It's got to be really cool to be in that group of people, thinking that like you're not even 240 and you're one of these people.
Yeah, and congrats to all the other winners and nominees. It was, a really cool group and successful group to be a part of, and yeah, very humbling. I'm always, the team will tell you, I'm always like, I always appreciate getting awards and things, but it does kind of push me out of my comfort zone a lot of times to try to, I always want to, our team has so much of the impact and positive things that I do. I've had so many great people around me, and that's always important for everyone to know is like, it's an individual award, but there's a lot of people that were, that had a positive impact on that.
Did you think that this was possible? Was this something that was on your radar? Like, you're not only a business owner and that, but you're helping out within the community in a sense too with what you do. So like, did you think like while you're doing all this work that this was even on your radar?
Not, it's so many, not really. It's not something I think about. It's kind of one of those like compounding effects, right? Of like, you do a lot of the little things right and do what's right for people. I think a lot of the positive, whether it's awards or, you get new business, whatever it might be, that all kind of comes around. If you're constantly doing the right things and treating people well, I really think that comes back full field to you.
That's fun, because I was going to ask you, what would be your advice to any other young professionals listening to this that might want to be, in your shoes someday? Is that the same advice you would give them?
I would say you have to do the right thing, right? Especially in like a rural community like ours, you have to treat, everyone with respect, whether they treat you with respect or not, right? And you don't have to do business with everyone. That's what's great too. There's people that we've chose not to do business with, and there might be some different reasons why. But I really comes down to me is if you treat people, how you want to be treated, the classic golden rule, it will come back to you full force.
So how important is like the support from local people to your small business that you're running?
Yeah, I mean, it's the backbone of our business. I mean, I would say we have business probably in 20 states, I would guess. We're licensed in 20 plus states, I would say, but if we put a percentage on the radius around Fort Dodge of our assets and where our revenue comes from, the majority is going to be in our area. So it's vitally important, for, new business as well. And we provide some jobs, obviously, to people in our community, and they provide for their family. And it's a, kind of a trickle down effect of like, there's, when you start to think of like where our revenue, what it provides for, not only, us, financially, but also teams, their families, and then also just having that positive impact of we can have more people that are in a stronger financial, position. It's going to have a positive impact locally. I don't care who you are. More money to give away. People can make more sound decisions, whatever it might be. But yeah, I do think it's important, for people to at least consider, that local business and local opportunity. And we try our best as a team and to keep almost everything that we do and services that we pay for here locally.
So like, what's one thing about your work that most people wouldn't expect then? So we're talking about local people, you're involved locally, and this is, the backbone of what you guys are doing. But like, what's one thing that people just may not expect that a financial advisor actually does? Or what's the most shocking thing when they come in, they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I would say, especially my clientele, I play a consultant cap quite a bit, I would say, where I'm analyzing on things that maybe, one, we're not getting paid on, or it's a pretty, outside of our scope, whether it's, some business valuation stuff or different strategies. I think people are kind of shocked with how much we want to engage with their other professionals, right? I really do. I think that's something that our industry does a poor job. And I also think CPAs and attorneys do a poor job. They kind of get siloed,
Yes.
right, in their own way, when really, if you're doing what's best for someone, it's probably going to take, and it's a more sophisticated case, it's going to take all three parties a lot of times.
You need to understand that there is a point where it's outside of your scope.
Yep.
And you need, to the benefit of the customer or the client, you need to bring another professional in. It behooves both of you to do that.
And I think probably the estate planning conversation is definitely something that people probably wouldn't think that we have, but we go pretty in depth with that, of like, what does that look? And that's really the conversation piece, right? Because we're obviously not going to be the ones that are drafting any documents for individual, for their trust or will or whatever it might be. But a lot of times we'll uncover things through conversation, like, well, does your, trust reflect that? Or and a lot of times it doesn't, and like, well, if you want this to accomplish when you're gone, and a lot of times it's when someone's gone or not here, or they want assets to flow a certain way, people really need to have that conversation. And unfortunately, I would actually say there's more that don't than do, right? They just kind of do it the standard way. We have a will, we've set it this way, or they don't have anything, and they just kind of let it go through the natural process.
Oof, that's got to be tough though too. I mean, especially on your end, I've heard you guys talk about sometimes like, oh, we got to do extra paperwork when XYZ is not done sometimes, or you have to now instead of having the freedom of we can do this on our own, now it's like, now I do have to talk to this CPA and that lawyer to make sure all three of us are doing the thing that this, if it's not explicitly written out in a will and in an estate planning. And that's one thing that I never thought too much about. And it's probably, again, like you said, the age thing is estate planning. It's like, it's far enough out. I'm not going to worry about it, and I guess even still, I'm not thinking much about it,
We deal with it. And one reason I think we talk about it a lot or ask people, even if they're younger, situation is, one, we kind of see all scenarios, right? Unfortunately, a lot of times when we get involved, there's some type of transition event, right? Someone died, divorce, retirement. So they're good and bad, right? Good and bad, inheritance, right? So a lot of times those are, so we see, when, hey, this didn't go that well, right? Or now all of a sudden 3 siblings don't talk to each other because something wasn't documented correctly and one got more than the others or whatever. Or mom and dad wanted it that way. They just didn't tell the other two, which is okay. That's okay for mom and dad. But a lot of times, we are always advocates of communication, over communicating. You don't have to disclose numbers to your children, but just know if there's someone that's maybe getting a little bit different than other, or especially when like we have real estate or land is common in our area, right? And one might get more land, one might get life insurance proceeds, one, might get a little bit of both, right? And mom and dad have it set up that way because, son A is the farmer, right? So, and that happens or B and C, or they don't understand that when something happens and they're really mad, and they never speak. And we have families that don't speak, siblings that haven't spoken in years, that, we knew this happened and gone through. And I'm sure everyone's got that story of something that seems to just happen a lot with land, unfortunately, in our area.
Yeah, so opening up the dialogue is probably a good thing. Whether that be downward towards your kids or upward towards your financial advisor. Have you helped facilitate any of those conversations before, though, too?
Definitely. Okay. And that's again where a lot of times I would say where we'll come in. This is something maybe that people wouldn't think that we do, but say we do work with, their attorney on their estate plan, and they kind of get all their trusts and they retitle all their assets and get everything how they want. And then we might finish that up and say, hey, let's bring, do you want to bring all the kids here, and have a meeting and just kind of talk through. And again, I kind of ask them of like, some people are really open, and like their kids know what they have, right? So some aren't, some don't want to disclose everything, but they know they have land and this and that. And then we'll kind of facilitate that conversation just so hey, here's kind of how mom and dad, and here's why some of those conversations happen. If they want to ask questions or, that's that time to kind of do that. And we find that's the best way that, someone might not be happy, right, with the result of that, but they're not blindsided by it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the tough is when it's blindsided or something happens unexpectedly and nothing is the way someone expected it to be.
And someo's passed away and
Yes.
you can't ask the question.
Yep.
Why?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Or
you're always wondering why.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing.
That's brilliant. I again, these are fun conversations, even though it's like these are tough conversations and sometimes some that people don't want to have. Because I think talking about money was something when I was growing up, it's like, don't talk about politics, money, religion. There's like a handful of things. And now we're finally getting to a place where it's like, let's at least have a dialogue about this. So let's shift gears because we're getting down to the last couple questions. If you weren't doing financial planning right now, you graduated, you're a peacock, you decided, their football career as a player might not be what you're doing. What would you rather? You had mentioned coaching.
That's probably, I would say that's always in my brain. Like, cause I think I coach, that's like really what I do. And it's just different type of coaching. I'm not coaching X's and O's. I'm coaching, financial literacy or financial
Dollar
planning.
signs.
Yes. Probably coaching is definitely there. I would say, I have to your world of the accounting world, I do have a kind of a fixation with accounting. I'm pretty, I would say I'm definitely not a CPA by any means, but tax code, a lot of, balance sheets, profit and losses, business financials. I've really educated myself, not only for my own businesses, but I'm very just interested in it. So I know probably more than the average person on that. So it could be, maybe a CPA that would have been, and that parlays pretty well with our industry a lot of times, where you'll see someone kind of wear multiple caps, but I think there should be, personally, I just always think there should be a separation of your accountant versus your financial advisor, financial planner, but I would say coach or CPA.
That's fun. All right. Okay. So another question I have is have you ever like learned anything either like while you were working as a financial advisor or, just in that area, have you learned anything that applied outside of there? Like whether that be like you learned something from a client and you took this into your own life or your own businesses and we're like, let's apply this, or maybe even while you're like, you learn something while you're helping somebody else out and you think, this might actually be something good to take away and apply to my own family or something like that.
I don't have anything specific that I can think right offhand, but I'll tell you 100%. I have many traits and things that I've like, because I do see that of like whose kids, especially as I say someone that's in their 60s, 70s, 80s, I start to develop a relationship a lot of times if I have a strong relationship with that client with their children. At some point I get introduced or, hey, if something happens to me, right? And you can really, really see it, and I work with a few families where I work with parents and then like multiple kids and their families. And you can see the ones that there was some positive traits and things. And I'll always ask like, hey, was there something that you talked about growing up? And I have some specific, I can't ever share client information, but I have some specific people. I'm like, I'm very, very impressed by their family. I'm like, well, if I can gauge my family off something similar at some point, cool. And a lot of times it's a trait, or it really comes back to, I can tell you right away, like they treat people very, very well, and they're respectful, do things, just the little things right. And that's where I always think that if like you can just do the very small things consistently right, or what you think is right, it'll have a compounding effect.
One of my favorite sayings is you take care of the small things, the big things take care of themselves, and then the addendum to that is it's all small things.
Yep.
Everything is a small thing, and you need to attack it with that detail oriented.
You've heard I don't know if you've heard this, but Matt Campbell, Iowa State head football coach, he says you fall in love with the process will love you back, right? The process is the small things, right? That's one of my favorite, quotes that he has. And I think there's, whether it's football or running a business, nothing more true.
Absolutely. All right. So we're getting close to the end here. Got one question left. I do want to say before we get to that question, once again, congratulations on being one of the 10 under 40. I think you're the maybe fourth person we've talked to, third or fourth. So
thank you very much. I appreciate it. Very humbling.
Yeah,
very well deserved.
Speech.
I can talk for days, so the team will tell you so.
All right, so we are at a digital marketing firm here, Spin Market. So Is there a time in your life where marketing impacted you and you possibly didn't know it until after it had already impacted you?
Yeah, I'm always the one. Bailey will tell you. I'm always like, God, do we need to spend that on marketing? But I will tell you through the podcast, we've had a couple times where I'm always have like an aha moment of like, we've had a couple clients from out of state that now we've gathered
really cool.
from there. And then I've also had another situation where someone had listened to the podcast, and I had a client tell me that they were meeting with this individual for some outside business. They had looked up that individual's name. They were on our podcast, and they listened to that, and it was a positive impact for that person.
Wow,
kind of a multi-layer. And I was like, that's wild. And I had to share that, and it was kind of one of those things like, especially the podcast. I'm using podcasting specifically, but there's all kinds of other marketing that you guys do for us and your team and anyone else out there. But the podcast sometimes is hard to know your reach, right? Without just look at numbers, you can tell that, but that's about it. And sometimes you get a phone call and you don't really know, but it was probably a compounding effect of all the little touch points on Facebook and LinkedIn and email marketing and whatever it is, and the podcast and really it comes back to, I really appreciate the visibility that we're staying top of mind for people. And sometimes it feels like, hey, is this worth it at times or whatever it is? But, we have those little stories that just keep kind of coming up and compounding. So I'll give you guys a plug for that.
Love it. Thank you very much.
I always love plugging this part about podcasts. It humanizes you. So like you had picked on like car dealers, and like I bet people could pick on a financial advisor. Thinking about, like a W-2 type one where you're just out there to make the cold call sales and things like that. But if you had a podcast where everyone got to see you once a week or twice a month or whatever it happens to be, they kind of already know you. So this isn't a cold call anymore. If they call down to Full Swing Financial Planning, they know you, they know the other Kole, and they know Bailey pretty well from just being on the podcast. And they can go down there, and even if they wanted to, they could choose which one of you they think would fit them the best and go in there. And they already know your personality type and what you know. And
I think it makes us real too, because that's what I always want to. I don't want people to ever feel like I'm preaching to them, right? It's like we have our own problems and we don't do everything correct either. Like we're sometimes we make poor money decisions, and that's a hard thing in our industry. We're like, well, I'm telling someone to do this, but yet I'm not practicing what I preach. So that's one thing. And we tell our stories on the podcast. So I think that's the vulnerability. And I think if more people, especially that don't feel like they're in a positive spot on the financial end, be a little more vulnerable asking for help, right? It's okay to ask for help because not everyone knows what they're doing and not everyone's expected to know.
Yeah, it's cool. You're no longer just like a face on a park bench or a billboard. Yep. You are a person that they can kind of get to know along the way. That's really kind of cool. All right. That's basically all I have. Again, thank you for podcasting here with us at Spin Market. I do want to say How to Money with Kole and Kole. Check it out. I'll put a link down below. When I first got here, this was the first thing I glommed onto. I was just like, ooh, people talking about money, neat. And I listened to 30 episodes in a month, and I was like, this is awesome. All right, I'm in. And then eventually I started doing the production work on the back end or the editing and uploading and things like that. So it's been really cool to watch you guys grow, the advice that you give.
It's very, very warming to see what has happened over the last 2 years.
Yeah. And I'm off camera when we're recording, but I'm sure every now and then you guys will say something. I'll be like, yeah. I'm very
over that. Over there shaking your head.
It's like, oh, I agree with this so much. Or I've made this mistake and had to learn the hard way. So yes, please listen, it's just super fun. So thank you very much for joining us today.
No, I appreciate you having me on as a guest. And again, thanks for all the work that you do for our office and our team.
Well, we have one more thing. We have Buster the Bulldog. He's our mascot here at Spin Market, and we are bulldogs to get you on digitally online. So we like you to rub Buster's head for good luck.
There you go, Buster.
And look how shiny he's getting.
We need some good luck in our office.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This podcast is produced by Spin Market and Digital. Located in Fort Dodge, Iowa, Spin Market's highly skilled team can help you increase your market by updating your website, improving SEO, designing advertisements, and producing podcasts that will grab the attention of your market. Contact Spin Market today for all your digital marketing needs at digitalagent@spinmarket.com or call us at 515-302-8026. And to learn more, visit our website at www.spinmarket.com. That's digital agent at spinmarketwith2ks.com or 515-302-8026. Or visit our website at www.spinmarketwith2ks.com.